and I immediately homed in on chairs, starting with Windsor chairs. And I really wanted to make a Boggs chair. Brian Boggs was furniture maker at the time. He was in Berea, Kentucky, and I was able to take a class with him in 2006, and again in 2008, and again in 2010. And after that 2010 class, I ended up, Brian asked me to come and assist him at his classes. I did that twice a year for 2 or 3 years, and then I started teaching his chairs in my shop in 2012, and I did that for 10 years. And I stopped teaching. This is my first year not teaching. And I'm also a graphic designer, and I made these class manuals that go with each chair. And you're free. Feel free to look through them. They're also for sale. So if you're interested, I'm not trying to sell them, but you can scan that and go to my website. So I am. They are pretty comprehensive. This one on the armchair is 131 pages. This one's a little shorter on the side chair. There are 3 other. The thing that I'm working on now is getting some of my students to also teach. So there are 3 other instructors right now for the Boggs chairs, and we'll be working with the 4th this summer. So there are places to still get in-person classes, and one of the students is doing remote classes. So he just started a 12-week remote class, so that'd be easier for people that can't travel, that sort of thing. So I'll set these aside. So we're gonna steam bend these cherry legs. Maybe you can, that chair right next to you, that walnut chair with the nice seat. I brought examples of different chairs that have bent rear legs and bent slats. This chair is the Boggs side chair, and this is the leg that we're bending for this chair. It gets trimmed a little bit, so it's not exactly the same length, but it is the same bend. So the end result is what you see here. The bending starts with a slab, and we're looking for very straight grain, we're looking for all the really boring wood, as straight and no figure at all. And I asked Shay to source some logs, and he got the most beautiful cherry logs I've ever seen. These were like 10 feet long, straight as an arrow, almost no defects at all. So they start, really the process begins by, if you can get back that far, by selecting the log and then milling it so that you're milling for straight grain. And then these are air dried. You can bend kiln dried wood, but you have to rehydrate it. I've never done it, but I know people have taken a bending blank like this and soaked it in water for 5 days, something like that, to kind of make it somewhat closer to air dried. So these are air dried. Moisture content 12 to 20% is a good moisture content for bending. So this cherry, I have a moisture meter. This cherry here is, I think, about 14, 13. It depends on the species. Cherry dries very fast. If you were to mill up, if this board was soaking wet green in cherry, and I milled it into, if I just cut these strips and milled it into rough 2x2 blanks and stickered them and put them in a place that was greasy, they'd be down to 20% in a month, right? On cherry. Walnut, no. Cherry and ash dry really fast. Walnut dries really slow. If you're a glutton for punishment, try white oak. And so what? So the rear legs are the hardest parts to find in the board. They need to be roughly 4 feet long with no flaws in them, nothing. And so generally what I'll do is get as many rear leg blanks as I can, and then what's left over I can use for front legs or slats or rungs. Rungs in particular need to be quarter sawn, so when we're milling, we mill up 1 or 2 quarter sawn pieces out of each log specifically for slats. So usually I don't use this wood that's milled for legs and the other parts for slats. So these would be legs, front legs, rear legs, rungs, and on armchair arms. So again, we're going for straight grain. The straightest grain is parallel to the bark edges. So the first thing I'll do is score a line, draw a line parallel to the bark edge. I always mill off the sapwood. I just got used to that doing it for class, because if someone's coming and wanting to do a walnut chair, they want it to be brown, not white. So I just always mill off the sapwood. And then I've laid these out the way I would cut them on a bandsaw. Actually, the first thing I do is just to make it easier to deal with, is I'll rip this down center, right on the pith. And I did this all by myself on my bandsaw, right down the center. And then I have 2 halves that I can work with. And on this one, I'm I'm parallel to the bark edge, but off by about 1 inch, because we've got a flaw on the other side, so I had to work around that. But I'm still getting 6 leg blanks out of this, and then what's left in the middle, this could probably be a front leg, this could be a front leg, this might not be wide enough for a front leg, but could be a rung, front leg or rung, depending on how it looks. So really a really good yield. The board, the next board down, next board up, where I milled these out of, I had 18 inches front to back, clear, not a single flaw or knot in it. So I got nine blanks out of that look like this. So the next step is just to cut these, and these are in pairs. If you look at the end grain, the end grain is these two outer ones have matching end grain, and as they move towards the center, the angle of the end grain changes, but they'll match. These two will match, these two will match, and these two will match. So I try to keep them like that if I can. It's not essential, but it's a nice thing to do to get matching end grain, and that affects what the the face of the leg will look like on the top, which is this part up here. And what we're going for is if you look at the it'd be easy if we just move this. If you look at the long grain in these, we want that long grain either to be straight up and down or angled from the outside towards the inside, so that the grain mirrors the position of the leg, the way the leg is in the chair. So, for instance, I've drawn the grain direction on this pair, this blank, and in the chair, if you were looking at the chair from the front, the grain would be angled from the outside towards the inside. If you did the opposite like that, you would have the leg angled this way, but the grain angled the opposite way. So I'm paying a lot of attention to that grain orientation of that of the long grain, which is this face up here. So this is a good example. The bar stool is a good example. The little chair right behind you is also another good example of how that grain follows the angle of the leg. And that's the other interesting thing is that with the grain rising towards the center, like this, it will, the actual grain lines will get wrong way. So you can see where the grain, where this line is on here, but when you cut a taper into it, it moves down to here. And it's changing the angle from this, which is fairly straight, to that, which is more, and we're moving it in the direction that we want it to go. So we're paying attention to all that. And then, of course, everything, there are no flaws. You can have small flaws as long as they're not in the bench. I did a bend for that little chair there. Wasn't paying attention. And I had tiny little knot right perfectly on the apex of the bench. It just buckled right there, so I couldn't use it. So I'm always paying attention. So these are milled, rough milled to roughly 2 inches square. Then I joint 2 edges, finish mill down to 1 5/8 square, and I tear them up as pairs, and then I cut the tape. And then this is ready to go into the steamer. So the legs that are in the steamer look just like this. Comes down to this end. Anything that drips down, I've got a bucket down there to collect the anything that drips. You want to get it to 210 degrees or so. I've got a thermometer in here. And, I had when I was first doing it, I could never get my steamer above 200 degrees, never. And only to find out that you can calibrate these thermometers. So this one was not calibrated. I'm sure it was 210. I'm sure it was. But there's a little nut on the back, so you put it in boiling water. And, when it got to 210, so 210, I used 2 steamers. You want lots of steam, and you want steam moving through the box. And one of my students kind of understood what was actually going on in why you're using steam. So I'm just going to read you, because I didn't really understand that. So lots of steam. So I'm just going to read you what he told me about the steam. So steam is one of the best and fastest ways to transfer heat. There are 2 major ways steam heats up wood. First, it is simply hot. It is reliably close to the boiling point of water at 212 degrees. Second, when the steam box is full of steam, the steam will condense into liquid on the wood. And I think that's the key, is that condensing steam transfers about 1,000 BTUs of steam for every pint of water. for every pint of water, 1,000 BTUs of heat is transferred to the box. Hot air, as a comparison, can only transfer about 43 BTUs of heat. So condensing steam, and someone, I put this in an Instagram post, and someone that was a steam guy, you know, a radiator guy said, oh yeah, that's this thing. There's two different ways to transfer heat, and one is when it changes state from a gas to a liquid, it's transferring heat and does it very efficiently. Also, the condensing steam drives moisture into the wood to some degree, speeding the heat transfer to the middle of the wood. What does this mean to the chair builder? More steam moving through the box means better and faster heating of the wood. Thicker pieces take longer to heat. The heat needs to penetrate all the way to the center of the part. These parts are 1 5/8 square, and depending on the density of the wood, we'll steam them anywhere from 2 hours to 3.5. So walnut cherry, fairly soft on the hardwood scale, 2 hours. Red oak, 2.5. White oak, 3. Ash, 3. And if you like sharpening tool, hickory, 3.5. So. Insulating your box will allow most of the steam to transfer heat to your parts rather than the inside of the steam box. Well, that's, I added one thing. In a steam box made of wood, which is what I used to have, so this is wood on the outside, but the actual steam chamber is that PVC. In a steam box made of wood, some of the condensing steam will go into the box. In a box made of PVC or other similar material, all of the condensing steam will go into the part. So I think this is steam. I made this 2 or 3 years ago based on an article in Fine Woodworking written by the Australian chair maker Vern Chanley, basically his steam box. And this was a big improvement over what I had, which was simply a 7 by 7 inch square plywood tube, no insulation, nothing. But I used it for 15 years. It didn't look like much when I took it apart. So, the steamers you don't want them to run out of water. If they run out of water, if the water gets too low, they'll kick off. The only way to turn them back on is to cool them down, which means running cold water through them 2 or 3 times. You can't just add more water; they won't go back on. So I'm very careful to, most of the time, to keep them filled with water. When I fill them with water, I always add boiling water, so I'm not lowering the temperature as we're steaming. No, if you have hard water, don't use it. You'll get lime all over the elements. But other than that, I'm not sure. I use rainwater because I have rain barrels right outside my shop. But we also have a water softener, so I can use that. I don't know if there's anything else that will damage the elements. I know lime will, for sure. So, so it takes about a half hour to get up to steam. Then I put the parts in and then steam it for however long I think is going to be necessary for that part. Okay. Any questions on the steam box? 2 to 2.5 hours. That went in there at 5, but we had a short period where we blew we blew a breaker. That so in my setup, I have an outlet. I have mine on a porch, and I have it up higher so that when I open that door, the steam goes above my head, not into my face, which I'll have to be careful on this one. But I have an outlet there on the porch, and each receptacle on that outlet is a separate circuit. So 2 of these on 115 amp or even 120 amp circuit will blow the fuse. So, which we did. Yeah, yeah. Was that a 20 amp? Yeah, so we blew a 20 amp fuse. But I don't think it was off for long. So I think we'll be fine. So we're coming up on 2.5 hours. So what I'm going to do is I've got two legs in there. I'm going to bend one leg and go through the whole process, and then I'll have a couple of you guys come out and bend the second leg. So when you're bending, you want to have everything ready. You want to know exactly what you're doing, so you're not. If you don't do this a lot, you should rehearse. I do this a lot, so I know the exact steps. This form is an overbend. We're going to bend this until it hits form top to bottom, and but ultimately it's going to go into a drying form, which is this. This drying form has the same shape as the bending form. The form itself is the same shape, but we're pushing it up to this pin here to dry it at a more relaxed bend. The overbend helps those wood fibers. We'll keep it in the overbend for about an hour before transferring it to the drying form. And I think that by going further than you want, it helps to get those fibers to stay where you want. So we have this rotates because we have a slight reverse curve in here, so you can't just put this part in here without having this swivel. There's the black strap is the strap that's going to contain the wood, keep the wood from expanding on the outside. The stainless steel is actually just floating in there. And the reason for stainless steel is just to protect the wood from the black strap staining. But you don't want to stretch that stainless steel, which is why it's captured here, but floating here. What else? It's from Lee Valley. It's bending strap. Yeah. It's got these holes punched in it every 4 inches exactly, which makes it easy to, make a handle, make a swivel, things like that. When I put these, what needs to happen is the top of the leg is going to needs to touch here, and then there's going to be a gap between the bottom of the leg and here. We're going to put a wedge in there so that the strap is held really tightly on the leg, and that tightness keeps the outer fibers from expanding, which is they're going to want to break and expand. The inner fibers are going to compress. If you look at this, I drew this. These lines were all parallel to each other before the bend. And you can see that they're closer together at the bottom. That's where the wood is compressed, and further apart at the top. I wish I knew, is there anyone really good at math? Tell me how to measure from here to here over the arc, what the length is, what's the difference in length between this and that. But that's what's going to happen is the wood's going to compress on the inside of the bend and expand on the outside. But to keep that from breaking on the outside, you have to hold that leg in very tightly. But then the other problem is, I didn't do it on this. The other problem is that if the wood, if it's too tight at the bottom, the wood, you can get a compression failure. The wood will buckle like this, and this one has a little bit of compression failure in there, but not enough to be a problem. But I've seen it really bad. So what I started doing is just clipping off the bottom a little angle like that. So from about the middle down. So really, the bottom of the strap here is only contacting the top half where we need it because it's trying to keep the outside and giving some room for the inside to compress without getting too compressed. So, yeah, these are long. It's nice to be able to trim off the bottom for sure. This one gets about an inch off the bottom and about 3 inches off the top. And my theory on that, the length of the bending blank is 45 and 3/16. Why not 45? My theory is Brian was experimenting, and he had a form that worked at 45 and 3/16, and he thought that would be a good length for a leg, and decided he wanted 3 inches shorter, so he never changed the form. So he's always cutting off 3 inches off the top of every single leg. That's my guess. I never asked, but I'd be pretty sure that that's what. Because they're never exact coming out of the steamer. Never. They change length coming in the steamer. So it's really hard to get them to fit this way with the wedge. And I used to do 2 wedges until after 10 years, I just figured, oh, cut this at an angle so I can put 1 wedge in there. You know, all these little things that seem obvious once you do it. So I'll just I'm going to bend this one and just tell you what I'm doing as I'm doing it. The other thing we want is to keep these straight. So I have these posts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line the leg up against these posts on the far side, and I'm going to wedge them from this side. That's what these wedges are for, to try and keep them as straight as possible as we bend. Okay, do it. Always wear gloves. I'm going to take my glasses off. So I'm going to be really careful because this steam is going to want to hit me in the face. And you've got plenty of time. You don't have to rush. And this is hot, but it's not too hot to put in your hands. So I'm going to slide this down, and I have it right now up against this swivel stop. I'm going to put a couple wedges in here to keep the leg against this post. So again, I'm forcing keep everything straight. I think I might put a couple in here. These are just finger tight. They're not real tight. I'm going to put this clamp on. This clamp has a inset here. The strap is 2 inches. The leg is 1 5/8. That's 3/8 of an inch, so that I can force the leg to be parallel to this end. The first part, there are 2 parts to this bend. One is the reverse curve, and then the second is the bend at the middle here. So the first part is just done with the C-clamp. And I'm going to go until it just touches the form about there. Now what happened is, if you were paying attention, I put this up against this swivel stop. As you bend this into the reverse curve, it moves this. So now we have to fix that. We're going to lift this up, and we're going to wail on this end. Sound change? Is it touching? Yep. I can tell by the sound. So that I'm going to put this clamp back on. Try to get this. Keep the strap straight relative to the leg. I'm going to take one of these wedges and go in this way and tap this in so that it's tight. And now we're ready to bend. Hand here, you don't want to do this. This bench is higher. Whoops. Slow and steady. Brad, maybe you can give me a hand. What I want to do is get a clamp right there. Probably not that one. So this is, if this was not up, I can get a pin in here. I've got to get a pin. No, I'm going in there. I should be able to do it. Never mind. Pin in there, but you can take that off. Then I'm going to put a wedge in, just lightly. So what I'm checking now is, before I tighten this up, is I want to make sure the leg is again parallel to this side of the form. And that all looks pretty good. And now I can hammer this wedge in, and the goal is to get this flush with the form. Pretty good, huh? Tighten these up. Sometimes you get a little gap in here. It's not that critical. Remember, this is an overbend, but if I do get a gap, I'll just I can clamp it. Whatever you do on one leg, do it on the other. So we can get that to touch the form. That's it. That looks pretty good. I can feel a little bit of crinkling in here, so I think we're going to get the same sort of compression failure that we have on this one, but I don't think it'll be that. But that's it. That's what you want. I'm going to leave it in this form for an hour. Then I'll transfer it to a drying form like this leg is. So again, the shape of this drying form is the same as the shape of this bending form, but you can see that we've let the leg rise up. So this is the drying position. There are other bends that I do where I have a separate drying form that's the actual shape of the drying of the dried leg. So the shape of the drying form is different from the shape of the bending. But this was the way Brian was doing this particular one, so I just kept doing it. Right, except you could use this as a drying form and capture the leg between these two pins, but these are actually an inch taller, from this because you have to take into account the handle. But usually I just go, I have 4 of these and I have like 8 of these, and these are much easier to deal with. You know, I can pick them up. More of the wood is exposed for drying. So then these will go into, so after an hour, they go from here to here into the drying position. Then I'll put them in, I have a little closet that's heated to about 110, 120 degrees with a little oil-filled radiator. There's a French cleat on the bottom here, and I just hang them up. And depending on the moisture content of the leg going into the bend and the species, it will determine how long it takes. So these only took a day to get below 10%. Because they started at like 12, and cherry dries very fast. So a day in the drying. If this was walnut at 20% going into the bend, and it'd probably take 3 or 4 to leave, because walnut, it's higher moisture content to start, and walnut dries slowly.
Do you have to monitor the moisture in your heating closet as well to make sure the humidity's down?
Oh yeah, well, you get it hot, it's going to be. It doesn't register on the humidity, whatever the humidity thing says. It gets down to 16, which is the lowest. I have one side of the heating closet is it's really simple. It's just a 1-inch piece of foam, but I left a gap in the bottom and a gap in the top, on the theory that the cool air would come in the bottom and go out the top. It gets very dry in there. Okay. We'll take this one out after we've done the next leg. So, Evan and Brad, you want to help? You want to bend? Oh yeah. So the other thing is there's a taper. If you look at this plane is flat, and this plane has a taper. The taper should always be up. Taper is always up, and I write on here up. Yeah. I just you get into these habits that you do all the time, and honestly, I don't think it would matter which way you did it, but I like to be consistent. So. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so you do the wedging, the side, you'll get it in. You'll do this first one. You'll do the side wedges. You're gonna whale on the bottom. I'll walk you there. They always go that way, always. Yeah. So it could be right up against here, but as soon as you force it in, it moves this way. And if you leave it like that, then this strap is not doing anything. Again, the leg needs to be captured end for end for this strap to be effective, to keep those outside fibers from breaking. Well, you're bending this into a curve, so it's I don't know. Okay, so I'll put the leg in. You're going to put some side wedges here and side wedges here. You're going to take, while he's doing that, you're going to take this clamp and do this clamp. You're going to clamp that. You take this off, hammer until it's up against here, and then you're going to bend, and then you can do the pin. When you put this in, just put it in finger tight to start. Then you'll finish up with the side wedges, and then you'll hammer this in.
One more time. What?
It's the strap is 2 inches wide. The leg is 1 5/8, so that offsets it so that you can force the leg to be in alignment with this edge of this. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to need that glove.
Oh,
You're not
going to get out of there. All right, hold on. The sucker's tight.
Oh, well, as I'm going to hand you that, and before I close this, these are slap lines. So I'm going to put these. I don't know what moisture content they are. They've been sitting around for a long time, so they're probably pretty dry. I'm going to set these in there, and we'll give them 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops before we bend these. So. What's that? The slats are 275 thousandths thick, or thereabouts. You want to get this like that. Okay, let's get it all the way. Got it? Okay. Okay, so now get a side wedges in there. And now you're going to clamp. What you want to do, remember that you're not going to go down the center of this. You're going to go off towards that end because you want to be over the center of the leg. You can watch that leg move that way. Yeah. Yeah, if it was straight, it would probably. Okay, no, oh, not too tough. Not too tough. Let's back off a little bit. Okay, back down. Stop. Okay, take this off. Now, with the dead blow. Okay. Yep. Now, let's put this back on. Okay, now this way. Go in that way. Not super tight. Okay. Now the
Right, wedge this out.
no, just down. Hand here and there. Slow and steady. Try to go down straight. Nice. It was a good height for you. This, and now just slip this plug in there. Finger tight. So I tried to clamp this a little tighter, maybe than I did before. Try to keep that down. The reason it's doing that is because of that cut that we put into it. If we had a straight cut, it wouldn't do that. So this can come off. So now you can get the sideways in all the way and tight. So we want to make sure they're up against those. As close as you can get.
That's our wow.
Yeah. Yeah, tap each of them in with with now you're going to wail on that. Okay, let's just get a clamp on this. Let's put it right here instead. Right? Up here? Closer?
Yeah, this is where tight.
You do get some twist. Um, you could do that. It'll be fine. We're just making chairs. We're not making cabinets. People think that chairs are really hard, but they're really forgiving. At least these chairs are.
That looked very professional on camera, if that helps.
I forgot to check the time that probably a little after 8 we'll start bending the slats. We can take this out. The other thing I do that I just learned about. So this is after 17 years of making these chairs. I was up in Vermont co-teaching a rocker class, and this young 34-year-old hotshot says, well, you need to set the bend. Get this, we've only heated this to 120 degrees. And he said, the bend doesn't set unless you get to 140. And what he was doing, and what was happening is that the bends would be close, but there would be some variation in the bend. And you could just put two legs side by side, and sometimes there'd be an eighth of an inch difference in the height at the apex. And he said you need to set the bend before you take it out of the drawing. And the way to do that, and I've done it on both of these legs, is a heat gun. You take a heat gun and very slowly go back and forth on each side, 3 minutes. So just back and forth slowly without burning the wood, which I did on this one. And getting it up to 140 will set that bend in place. I am to get them down below 10%, but I'm not heating them at 140. So you won't completely set the bend until you get to 140. I suppose that would be, I don't know, I don't like, you know, I don't mind doing that. Well, I don't even do that for runs. I get nervous at that. But anyway, we're heating this up 3 minutes with the heat gun pretty close, you know, on the top and on the side. By the time you're done, if you put your hand on there, you can't hold it. It's that hot. And then both sides. So I've done that on both of these, and we'll see if they match. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So I'm going to take this out. These things just fall out in the drying cloth. It's hung up like this, and they just fall out. So this also has some compression failure, a little worse than that one. But let's see if the bends. Not quite. So we do have, if you look at these, we do have a little bit of variation in the bend. I did 4 legs for a chair like that little 2-slat chair there on the left, and they were perfect. So one thing we can do to solve this problem would be to heat the high leg up, heat the high leg up again, and clamp it down. We can actually flatten it, but you have to use heat. Heat that. Yeah. So for the slats, this is the slat bending form. What's that? That's just that is that 16 gauge stainless steel. This form is a radius, so it's half a circle. Slats vary in width, and it's also an overbend. So like these slats, sometimes I do slat blanks like this, which is what we're going to bend, and they're all the same length. But on some chairs, we cut out the slats ahead of time and bend them after they've been cut to shape, and you have a shorter slat and a longer slat. When you have a radius, the amount of overbend, no matter the length of the slat, is the same because it's a radius. And we have you can see how much difference this is between the radius of the bending form and the final radius of the slat. So the principle is the thinner the material, the more overbend you need for the leg to hold, for the part to hold its shape. If you think about it, if you had a dowel and you draped a piece of paper over it into a U shape and took the dowel out, it would go back to flat really easily. If you took a piece of cardboard and bent it into a U shape over a dowel, took the dowel out, it would retain some of that shape. So the thinner the material, the more overbend, which is why this is a greater overbend relative to the part than the leg is. And there's, of course, there's some the rocker legs that I do for the box chairs are not overbent. They're fine. So everything I told you about overbending may be wrong. I don't know. But I think the rocker is not overbent because it's a tighter bend, and it'd be really hard to get it much further than it is. So what we're going to do is put the slat in here, bend it, clamp this down. What's going to happen is in here, the slat's going to hit this form completely. But on this end, you can't clamp it tight enough to get it to touch. So after 15, we're going to hold it for 15 seconds and then take the part out and reverse it end for end, put this end in, and then go another 45 seconds. So a minute total. And then take the slat out of the form, and this is the drying form. It's just just a cleat with these. The drying form for something like this is just a series of these cleats at a specific angle and a specific distance apart, but basically the same principle. On these slats, we go for 2.5 minutes. And the reason is on a flat slat, the overbend is distributed nicely across the whole width of the slat. So a minute is enough. On these, the only part of the slat that's really getting overbent is at the tenon end. So on a wide slat like that, the particularly the top part of the slat is not really getting end-to-end overbend. So we just hold it in the form for a longer period of time, and that seems to have worked really well. The other thing I like to do with the slats is, if you can see up here, these are 6 slats out of a single board. I put a triangle on there, and I keep them in order. And I like to put them in the chair in order if possible. On this ash, it probably wouldn't matter because there's not much in the ash that you could see. But sometimes you get a little figure in a slat. It's nice to see that figure run up and down, particularly in a rocker where you have 6 slats. It's really nice to get them all out of a single board and run continuously from one side of the board to the other. So you have all 6 running like that. These are milled. The tenons are 1/4 inch wide. These are milled to 1/4 inches, 250 thousandths, and then we hand plane the thickness at the tenon end down so that it fits. It gets a really nice tight fit. So we mill them to about a little over 250, 270, 275, 280. All that done on thickness planer. So resaw and then thickness plane. And then the other thing I do is I mark so you could see that I bent all of these in the same direction. So I put a mark on one side, so that mark goes down on the form, and so I can bend them all the same way. I had a class where we were bending like a dozen slats, and I wasn't paying attention, and the students bent like 2 out of the 12 the other way. After they left, I put those slats back in the steamer and bent them back the other way. Worked just fine. Okay, so we're ready. So I'm going to bend. I'll do the first one, and then whoever would like to bend the next 2, feel free to come up here. Oh, we need a timer. You want a time? 15 seconds and then 45 seconds. So I'm not sure about this one. This one has a tiny little knot going straight through. Like here, we may get a kink, we may not. I've got my mark here on this side, so I'm going to put that down. You want to get it straight, parallel to the edge of the form. Then now 15 seconds. So you can see we've got a little gap here. Here it's touching, here it's not. Of course, the young Vermont guy had a solution to that. That 15? 45. So end for end. We're not doing this, we're doing this end for end. So the guy in Vermont, he cut a circle out of the form. So it was, there was a gap in here, and he just put a clamp on that, and it went nice and flat. So you didn't have to say, "Oh, you don't have to reverse that." No, I'm sure he was reversing it until I said, "No need." Now, I think you'd have to go pretty far. I had a student, he was trying to bend ash, and he couldn't bend it. It just wasn't bending, and just kept. I think he went like 6 hours, and it finally bent. So this will just go in here like this. There you go. Pretty nice. They are. Yeah, yeah, there's an angle. There's an angle. No, no, not for the slot blanks. But for something like this, you would have to customize. Each one gets a custom set of cleats. I didn't bring that form with me. Anyone want to do one? I've got two more. Okay. That goes down. So put it in the form. Make sure the long edge is parallel to the long edge of the form. Yeah. Then you get a clamp on. Okay. Well, they won't necessarily be the exact angle you need them. What we're trying for, are we at 15? I can explain to you what we're doing once we finish these two. So this one that it's got this tiny little pin knot that goes straight through the flat like this, and sometimes those will kink, and sometimes they won't. And this one didn't. Well, it may not look good. Structure, I don't think so. I don't think it would be a problem. So you see that a lot in that for some reason. Is that right? Yeah.
Almost looks like stress fracture.
Okay, so you take that out. Set one end in there, and I like to set it right on the edge, and then press it in, and then you have a way to. What you don't want is to get this in crooked in here, so I just get them even with the edge.
Okay, then you know
Then they're parallel. Yeah. Okay, and this one also had some defects in that, which is why they were laying around my shop. Okay, one more. Anyone? There's a mark. Down, mark down. The other down. Now you want this parallel, so you want to make sure that a line there. Okay, now just press. We can just unplug those now. We're done. Just plug there. Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah, typically when they make this chair, they put the chair together without the slats and then heat the slats up and somehow force them. I didn't make this chair. I've never done it that way, but somehow force the slat into the mortise. There you go. Yeah. I usually do. I usually put them in the drying closet. You put those in the drying. If you put those in the drying closet, they will fall out of the form after a day or two. I mean, you just hold them up and they'll just fall right out. They'll dry that fast. So someone asked about the angle of the slat. So what we're going for is we're trying to put a little more bend in the slat than we actually need. This, I don't know if you'll be able to, maybe I can, let's do it this way. So if you, so for the side chair and for the armchair, we want the slats at the tenon ends to be 26 degrees. And you can see, you can see that this edge of the slat is not parallel to this 26 degree mark. So we can, I didn't bring my, do you have anything with a little notch in it for this? For flattening slat? Here, let's just do this. So I have a little block of wood, just a little piece of 2 by, yeah, we can do this. I have a little piece of 2 by 4 with a notch cut out that's 1/4 of an inch, and I slipped this underneath. That's clamped to this, and now we can flatten this to match this angle. But the trick is that this angle, it's based on the length of the slat. So when you have slats that are, you're going to have slats that are longer and slats that are shorter. So if I take this and decide that I'm only going to go from here to here, well, all of a sudden, if I shorten this slat by about, if I shorten this slat by about 1.5 inches on both sides, it's at 26 degrees. So the shorter the slat, side to side, the less angle it has inside this arc. When you have it full length, you can see that we're way out. But as the slat gets shorter, it gets closer to the angle. So the goal is to bend these enough so that at the short slat, you're about right. And at the longer slats, you have to flatten them a little bit. So you can take a slat like this and just bend it a little bit. And we should see a difference. You can just feel that wood relaxing as you bend. And then you would compare that. So you can see how much closer we are. We had a huge gap up here relative to this 26 degrees, and now we're just a little bit over. Now you can go the other way if you on your short slats sometimes you don't have enough angle. You can take a couple of these clamps, longer ones, and clamp it this way, and with heat you can add bend. So you do have to manipulate the angle of the slats, even on these, which in theory, these are, the cleats are sized so that you get exactly the right angle every time, but it never works. So, so you can see the difference there just by doing that by hand. And so we do that. So we overbend the slats enough so that at the narrow slat we should have about the right angle. But we can go either way. We can adjust them. We try to hit that 26 degrees, and it's only it only matters at the tenon, so it's only the last inch or inch and a half that we're really paying attention to that. Oh, you definitely need to, yeah. You and if you're doing this and flattening it and it's not sticking, well then get the heat out. Or if you're using cherry, if you're trying to flatten a slat made out of cherry, I recommend using heat. The only slats that have ever broken in this process with flattening like this have been cherry. Every single one. They don't break in half. They split. You get splits. Yeah. I had my very first rocker student. So with the rocker, we're using slats like this that are already cut to size. And he came all the way from San Francisco to make a rocking chair in cherry. And we took this out, and I took out this one. And on the rocker, we're going for 30 degrees, but measured it. It was too high. Stick it in that little jig, go like this, and it cracked. I said, no problem. I've got a whole nother set. And this was at a time when I was first starting. I didn't have, piles of wood everywhere. If I had done that now, I would just mill up another slat, bend it, and tomorrow it'd be fine. I could use it. Took out the second slat, took out the top slat from the second one, put it in there, did that. That one cracked. So I lost my two longest slats out of, and I had no more quarter sawn cherry. But we, the solution was, we took this slat from one set and made it the long one, but we changed, on the rocker we were doing 30 degrees, we changed the angle to 25, which would make it longer, right? Shallower angle, longer side to side. So we did a custom 25-degree angle for the top and a custom 25-degree angle for the bottom. Then each one in the middle we had to customize to fit what was left. And it ended up being about an inch narrower at the top. It looked fine by itself, and then if you put it next to one that was done with the right width, it looked a little narrow, but it was fine. So he went home happy. Any questions? You guys all ready to go home and bend some wood? if I put it in my drying closet at 110 to 120 degrees, it would be dry probably the next day. They dry very fast. If I just leave them out, sometimes I don't have room. If I just leave them out a week, a few days, yeah, well, a few days at least. That's what the first class I ever took with Brian Boggs, we didn't have a drying closet, and he had this. That's exactly what he did. Everyone bent their slats, and we had one guy had a big hatchback with a big window on it, and we put the slats in there to dry. So, yeah, you can use your the second class I took with Brian. So the rungs that we use are super dry. They're dry to like 4%. I mean, they're in a light bulb kiln at 125 degrees for a week. They're like bone dry. But we didn't have. It was in the same town as Brian, but it wasn't in the same place as his shop. So he would bring these rungs back and forth with him from his shop to the school every day. And then, of course, one day he forgot. So they stayed overnight. It was April in Kentucky, and it had rained. And these things had just, the tenons had swelled up, and you couldn't put them into the mortises. So everyone took and then the sun came out, mid-morning, sun came out, everyone took their rungs, put them on the dashboard of their car, and by afternoon, they were back down where they needed to be. That's a whole nother topic, is wood movement.